Installing cabinets against the wall can be tricky. We often use fillers or scribe molding to clear that gap, but some ways look better than others and still require caulk to fill in the gaps. I want to show you my favorite way to build and install cabinets so you can get that clean look that doesn't require any caulk. It doesn't have such a big butt. Okay, so here we are in the master bathroom of the job site, and this bathroom has a shower and a massive opening just begging for some built-ins. So after back and forth with my client, we settled on this design, and we also have to match the existing bathroom vanity and color. So I put together a quick sketch so that we could break down the parts into the toe kick, the base, the faux countertop, and the upper cabinets. Okay, so it's a typical Indiana winter gloomy day, but that doesn't mean we can't still have some fun. I'll start this project the way I usually do, and that will be by breaking down the plywood into smaller, more manageable sizes and continuing to break down my cuts on the table saw. The inside of the cabinets will be made using pre-finished ply, while the rest of the cabinets, the cabinet doors, the face frame, the edge banding will all be white oak. And we will also be staining to match the existing vanity in the bathroom. In this case, Minwax Classic Gray is a darn near perfect match. Now, I won't get too detailed into the build process because I want to focus a little bit more time on the install, but hopefully you'll see just enough to understand what's going on. Now, these cabinets by definition are frameless cabinets, meaning they do not have a face frame built into it. Rather, on the install, it will look like they have a face frame, but that will make a little bit more sense as we go. So what we'll do once we assemble all of the cabinets is we will add a strip of material to the side of the cabinet carcass, and that strip will be plunged with domino mortises, which I will cut on the loose setting, and those will be mounted to the side of the cabinet. And the function of these strips is to give the fillers something to be mounted to once they are scribed. And once the cabinet carcasses are done, it's time to turn our attention towards milling up the white oak and getting all of the fillers made, as well as the cabinet doors. So here we are back at the job site, getting everything laid out and ready to go. First step, obviously, is to remove the baseboard, and it's important that I measure this correctly because I need to account for both the toe kick as well as the baseboard that will go against the toe kick. Now, you're not going to believe me when I show you, but I have proof that the very first time that I set this toe kick in place, it was perfectly level from left to right and front to back. And here is my proof. Now you're still going to have to keep in mind that I have not yet at this point screwed the toe kick to the wall, and when I do that, that's inevitably going to shift it out of level, so I'm going to have to make sure that I continue making sure that it's level as I screw it into place and making adjustments as needed. The front baseboard is going to have to go in at this point so that I can get it behind the baseboards on the wall. Otherwise, I won't have any chance of getting it in there once the cabinets are sitting on top. And now we can patiently wait as I teeter-totter my way into the bathroom with these very large cabinets, which, by the way, I actually had to cut down because originally I had made them to be about 30 inches wide, and then all of a sudden, as I was building them, I realized, wait a second, I'm going to have to get these through some doors. I'm going to have to resize these so that they can fit. So I ended up trimming them down and got them to about 26 inches deep, which is just plenty enough to fit the space. That ended up looking good. And since I have already leveled the toe kick, I can set the cabinet on top of the toe kick and secure it to the toe kick with some trim head screws, as well as mounting it to the back wall using shims just to fill in the space between the cabinet and the wall. Okay, now that this base is secured, it's time to do the countertop and get this fitting into the wall. So the countertop is really only going to have about 1.5 inches reveal on the top of it, because there's going to be another cabinet the same depth sitting right on top of it. So the really only most important part is that the front of it is flush with the wall here and maybe 2 inches flush with the wall back there. How it looks back there does not matter. It's all going to be covered up with the other cabinet sitting on top of it. So all I've got to do is measure the distance here and there, and then I'm actually going to angle the countertop back in that way, just so that I don't have any wide spots preventing me from getting the countertop in. So it should be nice and easy to get in. Now, I didn't actually film me cutting the countertop, but trust me, I did. It's not that exciting. And what's more interesting right now is how determined I am to get this countertop in there. The first cut didn't fit. The second cut, I think it's gonna fit. But maybe if I just look at it a little bit longer and maybe even adjust the camera, it might actually fit. Or I can just give it up, take it back out one more time, cut it one more time, and now it fits. And like I said, the only part that matters is this reveal right here. You can see I didn't even stain the rest of the wood because it's all going to get covered anyways. So all I'm doing is making sure it is flush on each end. So typically when I do a countertop, I will try to do solid 8/4 material all the way through when necessary, especially when it's going to be visible from the side. But in this case, it's not going to be visible from the side. It's only going to be visible from the front. So it would be an absolute waste and shame, I think, to make this whole countertop out of 8/4 material when you only get to see about that much of it. So in this case, what I did to make it appear like there is 8/4 material is I took some white oak ply, a whole sheet on one side, and then on the other side, I just did a couple of cleats on the bottom to lift it up to 1.5 inches thickness. So I doubled up the plywood. Let's focus in. There we go. Doubled up the plywood and then added 1.5 inches strip of 4/4 material and laminated it to the edge of the plywood here, and then stained it. And again, the next cabinet is going to line up to right about here, so you won't even see any of that. You're really only going to see this front edge portion. Okay, now we are really rolling, and I am so excited to keep on going. Just hold on. Let's look at that back again. Look at that little jump. Oh yeah, there I go. Super excited to get going. Thankfully, I've got some help from my client who was gracious enough to offer an extra hand and help me lift this awkward position and this cabinet all the way up into its spot. And we got it, and it fits exactly as I was hoping it would. And now that the upper cabinet is in its place, I can secure it to the countertop by throwing a screw through those side strips that I mentioned before, since they will eventually be covered, so long as I sink that screw in deep enough, that way it doesn't protrude outside. As far as the hardware is concerned, these are by definition frameless cabinets, meaning the cabinets are not finished with a face frame. And the hardware that I'm using is full overlay frameless hinges. So that means that the door is going to overlay right here. Now what I'm doing is I'm adding stiles here that will be flush with the front of the door, making it look like it is an inset set of cabinet doors. So there will be a face frame, but I'm basically building that and installing that on site as opposed to building it all together. The reason why I'm doing that is it is much easier to scribe a single stile isolated as opposed to one that is already attached to the cabinet. Now, if you remember those end strips that I had mounted to the ends of the cabinets from earlier, this is where they really come into play. If If you notice, there's two mortises on these fillers. One is shallower and closer to the finished edge, while other is deeper. The deeper one is meant to house the filler in place while I set it in place so that I can scribe it. And then once I've scribed it, I can then come back and set it into its proper position. You'll notice that I used the track saw to cut a majority of the cut away, and I also cut it at a bevel so that way it makes it a little bit easier to sand up to the line. Wow, that would be the best I've ever done. And here it is. I am super pleased with how this is coming out. And now I just have to do this a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 more times on some longer pieces. And then once that's done, I can move on to the cabinet doors. Now, as a little side note, I am saying that you don't have to use any caulk here, and you really don't. However, wood moves. So today, as I install this, it might look perfect. Tomorrow, the weather is going to be different. It might move a little bit. It might shrink a little bit. And so caulk may need to be applied at a later date. It's hard to say what wood is going to do. But the point is, I can only control what I can control. Now, as I was thinking about how I wanted to attach the upper portions of all of these stiles and rails, I thought, you know what, it might actually be a good idea for me to individually scribe each one of these pieces and then glue it all together and then try to fit the whole thing in place. But as I was doing this, I realized it wasn't fitting just right. And what I discovered was I had initially overcalculated the length of my rails, so I ended up just placing the stiles in place since I knew that they fit nicely, and then just trimming down the rails to the right size and then just hammering it into place with my fist. And it ended up working just fine, even though I thought it might be a little bit more consistent, but it ended up not changing anything. So all in all, I'm really happy with how the whole side came out to be. And so here's the final reveal for just the end stiles, as is the focus of this video. And now it's time to shift my attention to installing the adjustable shelving as well as the cabinet doors. And then after that, we are going to call it done.